Over the last few decades, the NBA has grown great suspicion about how it operates. Many unfair events and games have begged the question of, is the NBA fixed? So in this video, I will be giving theories using statistics on the pros and cons of why the NBA is or is not fixed, and leave the interpretation to you. Without further ado, let's start with the pros. The first pro supporting the conspiracy theory of the NBA being fixed is that the NBA is rigging games for television ratings. The idea of television ratings is the NBA wants to extend a series for more games to make more money off of viewership. No matter the skill differential, a series can go up to 6 or 7 games simply for ratings. To support this, after the Phoenix Suns were up 2-0 versus the Mavs and lost in Game 3, Devin Booker, a player on the Suns, said in the post-game interview, "We've been in this series before. We're up 2-0 coming to their home floor, and people want to see more basketball games, so we're going to play some more basketball games." Turns out that later became a 40-point Game 7 home blowout, but we won't talk about that. Now, anyway, even though this is speculation, that introduces the question of how can the NBA fix games to extend a series? And that job would lie in the hands of the referees by calling fouls. To display this, I will show a chart from Andrew Popolo at Harvard University. Every year since 2000, the average amount of fouls called in a playoff game are much higher than in regular season games. To calculate how many possessions it takes for a foul to be called, 96 possessions are averaged for each team in the playoffs, and 44.6 fouls are averaged every game. If you multiply 96 possessions by 2 to record both teams and divide that sum by 44.6 fouls, fouls are on average called once every 4 possessions, which is very frequent. Now, we already know that there are more fouls called in playoff games rather than in regular season games, but what advantages do these fouls provide? First off, fouls can become free throws for opposing teams, which can create huge discrepancies that can actually determine the outcome of a game, or make it a lot closer for building up tension. For example, recently the Pelicans shot 27 more free throws than the Suns in the playoffs, displaying the huge disparity that helped New Orleans win. Additionally, in Game 6 of the 2002 conference finals between the Lakers and Kings, the Lakers shot 27 free throws in the fourth quarter alone, resulting in a Lakers victory in a must-need game. This game seemed so blatantly rigged that even a politician questioned the officiating of the game in Congress. And to talk about a more recent playoff series, the Grizzlies and Timberwolves together averaged 60 free throw shots per game in their 6-game series. 60! Not only are those 60 free throws that could absolutely change the outcome of a game, but that's 60 additional minutes I'm wasting on the couch. Anyway, even though the NBA can fix games of refs calling fouls and free throw shots, there is still one more way refs can rig games. This is done by sending a player into heavy foul trouble. In the NBA, if a player receives 6 personal fouls, they are ejected. So how the NBA could attack a team is to get their star player into early foul trouble. To think of this in a scenario, let's go to LeBron James, a superstar player that was arguably a one-man team for most of his career. If in one game the NBA wanted the other team to win, they'd target LeBron by giving him 2 or 3 quick fouls within the first quarter to send him on the bench for the remaining half. And this is realistic because according to this chart by Peyton Soicher, players who have 3 fouls in the first quarter have a 0% chance of getting fouled out that quarter because they would be on the bench. If they stayed in the game, they would have about a 55% chance of being fouled out later on in the game. So anyway, with James on the bench, the other team would get up by a large amount by halftime. Now, this was simply a scenario and didn't occur, but in all truthfulness, this scenario would likely not have even occurred. And that brings us to our next pro: referees give star players special treatment. Throughout LeBron James' entire career, he averages about 2 fouls per game, and throughout 689 games or 9 seasons, James has been fouled out a mere 3 times. So, despite being a physical player, LeBron James is still treated very delicately compared to non-superstars. Here are some more examples. Michael Jordan has played 179 playoff games, but how many has he fouled out of? 0. Kobe Bryant has played 220. He has also fouled out of 0 playoff games. Wilt Chamberlain was tall and physical during the 60s and 70s, yet wasn't fouled out once in his entire career. Then you compare this to someone like Chris Paul, who is always in foul trouble during the postseason and has been fouled out 14 times in his career. Some more special treatment stars receive include getting to the free throw line often, receiving no calls benefiting the player, or simply complaining to the refs and getting their way. Peter Lee, who is a mathematician, proves this with his chart on how many more beneficial calls stars receive compared to others. So then, why does the NBA give star players such as LeBron, Kobe, and MJ more special treatment compared to others? And the answer to that question ties all the way back to the original cause, money. Now, remember, this is only a conspiracy theory, but if the NBA has a star player that attracts a big audience, then they'll give him many advantages to bring the team further into the playoffs. For instance, who would you rather see, Michael Jordan and the Bulls or Isaiah Thomas and the Pistons? Easily the Bulls, since audiences want to see Michael Jordan. Therefore, Chicago proceeds to the next round via some help from the refs. Now, for our 5th pro, we will discuss some of the suspicious events that have occurred in the NBA. The first instance is the infamous conspiracy that occurred during the 1985 draft. Patrick Ewing had been a high prospect at Georgetown University and was going to be the first overall pick in '85. 7 teams were entered into the lottery, each holding a 14.3% chance of receiving Ewing. It just so happened that the New York Knicks, the biggest market team in the NBA who everyone knew was going to be selected to take him, was selected to take him. Many believed David Stern froze the Knicks envelope beforehand to make sure they would receive the first pick. Of course, to bring excitement to the big market city of New York. Now, another incident can be Tim Donaghy being arrested for rigging NBA games. Donaghy would write a book after the arrest about the inner workings of the NBA, such as refereeing bias and playoff manipulation, but would be accused by the NBA to be the lone referee involved in fixing games. To list a few more suspicious incidents, there is Chris Paul's ironic 14-game losing streak when Scott Foster officiates him, the 2006 series between the Heat and Mavs, and the several instances of point shaving from players. Our 6th reason for why the NBA is fixed is home court advantage. Unlike other sports, home court advantage is an extreme upper hand in the NBA. According to Zach Kram, the home team in regular season and postseason play wins mostly above 60% of the time, and in some years has spiked above 70%. Finally, the last pro is one of the most important, market sizes. Just like how superstars could be spoiled with favorable calls, entire teams could be too. The cities with the biggest NBA markets include New York, Los Angeles, Boston, Chicago, and Miami. And those 5 cities combined have been featured in more than half of all the NBA finals since 1947. For instance, looking at a chart of NBA Finals viewership from 1987 to 2013, you can see that the first 3 years were above 20 million. That's because the LA Lakers were featured in all of those 3. It'd take a big drop because Detroit and Portland were in the finals, 2 small market teams. Then it'd jump back up when Michael Jordan and the Bulls were playing. After the Jordan era, viewership would drop, and in 2003 and 2007, the NBA Finals averaged 10 million viewers because San Antonio, a small market team, was featured. Then, viewership would rise again after Kobe Bryant and LeBron James were in the finals. This chart shows how much the NBA depends on teams such as LA and Miami to be in the finals in order for them to earn more revenue. Now, we'll look at the cons of the theory, is the NBA fixed, or basically why it is not fixed. Note that there will be far less support for the cons, but the ones shown will be very valid. For starters, you can't rig a shot. While free throw disparities can play a major factor in the outcome of a game, the team that has a better performance and makes more shots in the end usually ends up winning anyway. To state an example, let's head to the 2013 NBA Finals between the Heat and Spurs. In what is regarded as one of the closest NBA series in recent memory, in all 7 games, the team that made more baskets ended up winning. Even if the team made one more basket than their opponent, which occurred in games 1 and 6, the team still came out victorious. To simply put it, there's no way the NBA officials could rig a shot. Except for the 1972 Olympics, but we won't talk about that. For our second reason, we have to dive back into the NBA market sizes and explain the New York Knicks' misfortune. The New York Knicks are the biggest market team out of all 30 teams in the NBA. However, over the past decades, the Knicks have found no playoff success whatsoever. In fact, ever since 1973, the Knicks have not won a single championship. That was 50 years ago. So if other big market teams such as the Lakers and Celtics are constantly in the finals and generating high viewership, why is a biggest market team not? Why would the NBA not rig the Knicks' way into a championship? So, in the meantime, as the Knicks struggle, the San Antonio Spurs take the next spot on the cons with their large success over the last few decades. The Spurs, who are the 24th biggest NBA franchise, would win 5 finals from 1999 to 2014. And in every single one of those finals, television ratings were very low because San Antonio is a small market team in a small city with an arguably uninteresting team. So then, why would the NBA risk San Antonio being in 6 finals if they knew how much it'd plummet television ratings? The answer to this question supports the theory that the NBA does not rig certain teams to be in the finals depending on their market sizes, but instead lets the series play out and see who is the better team. And speaking of playing out a series, that brings us to our final con, the unpredictability of the NBA playoffs. Teams such as the Lakers and Celtics have both won 17 finals each, while holding some of the best players to ever play the game, such as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Kobe Bryant, Shaq, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson. So, understanding these big market teams are accustomed to dominating, sometimes there comes an unpredictable playoff series that the NBA has no possible way of staging. Take the 2021 playoffs, for example. In the first round, the Lakers, who held LeBron James and Anthony Davis and had won the finals in the previous year, were knocked out in the first round to guess who? The Phoenix Suns, who hadn't even made the playoffs in the 10 previous years. That was the first time LeBron had been booted in the first round of the playoffs in his career. Then, in the Eastern Conference Finals, the one-seeded Philadelphia 76ers, who, by the way, has a big market, were knocked out by the 5-seeded Atlanta Hawks after somebody with mental issues got afraid to shoot. Ben Simmons. Same with the 2-seeded Brooklyn Nets by Milwaukee. So, in a postseason that had strong big market contenders and was basically over the hump of COVID, the semifinalists included the LA Clippers, basically a baby brother to the Lakers, the Phoenix Suns, a small market team, the Atlanta Hawks, a team with minimal expectations, and the Milwaukee Bucks, the 25th biggest market in the NBA.
What?
Well, sorry NBA, but I asked for the Warriors and Cavs to be in the finals, so I'm out. Nevertheless, if the NBA cared so dearly about ratings, why would they not have staged teams with better ratings to be in the semifinals? Some more unexpected playoff runs include the 6-seeded Houston Rockets in '81. They shocked the Magic Johnson Lakers in the first round and paved their way to the finals. Also, the 2019 Raptors came from nowhere and won the finals, and in 1967, the 8 consecutive champion Boston Celtics were taken out by Philadelphia in the conference finals. So there we have it. The pros and cons supporting the theory, is the NBA fixed? Again, these are simply reasons given for you, as the viewers, to determine what you believe about the NBA being fixed. Feel free to share your opinions or any reasons I missed in the comments section below. But for now, Slippin' Sammy is signing out.